when you decided you wanted to pursue wrestling, talk to me about wrestling school training, how you got, your start in the business because it is so tough. It's different from baseball. You'd mentioned earlier
Yes.
you got hurt, but it's another kind of physical work that you have to really condition your body and get used to.
Nowadays, it's a lot easier to get into wrestling because there's so many schools. Back then, there wasn't that many, and I was wrestling in high school a little bit, and there this guy that was an indie worker had his a ring in one of our buddies' backyards. It was literally a ring set up in the backyard, and we would go there on the weekends and just wrestle, just do things that we saw on TV. And it wasn't until my baseball coach made me quit, and then when that fell to the side, I got back into it by seeing one of the guys I was wrestling with. I saw him at McDonald's one day, I think, and he said he was actually doing wrestling now, like at armories and things like that. And he said, "Why don't you come with me?" It was a Saturday show. He said, "We'll get in the ring, roll around, and see where it goes." So I did, caught the bug again, and it kind of took off. As far as being formally trained, I was never trained until I got to the power plant in like '98. It
Mhm.
was a There was a school in a town called Smithfield where all the young guys would go and just work out. And there was a local indie guy there, but he wasn't that good. And of course, you didn't know at the time how good they are until you get into it. So we just kind of listened to him and did things that, again, that we saw on TV. And I just learned as I went. Once I became an Anderson and started tagging, I was just kind of, on the job training. But as far as the school and being fine tuned, it wasn't until I got to the power plant that actually happened.
When you're learning from your trainers, whether it was the first school or later on when you went to the power plant, do you remember any pieces of advice that you got from your trainers early on that you can still recall today?
Um, One, this, I think my biggest piece of advice that I got that I use and I still implement and try to teach the younger kids today, younger guys, is less is more. And if you think you're going too slow, slow down. And I didn't actually get that from the school. I got that from Diamond Dallas Page because when I was coming along in the Indies, I was the local promotion I worked in Smithfield had their own little school. So I started teaching people. I had no business teaching, but I guess they thought I was good at what I was learning. So I was teaching people. And one of the people I actually taught was Lodi, Brad Kane, who became Raven's sign guy. So when I would go to the power plant and when I made there, I would go and hang out at Raven's house while they were at Nitro and things. And Raven would lead the key for us. And I remember one time Diamond Dallas Page come and hung out because a lot of people came to Raven's house, and he came and hung out, introduced myself, and we got to talking, and I asked him for some advice about a young up and comer, and that was his thing. If you think you're going slow, slow down more, and less is more. That was my two biggest pieces of advice. And I think another one was when Sergeant Buddy Lee Parker told me I had the best punch in wrestling, and I was punching too much in a match. He said, one time, you throw it one time, and it means way more than doing things 10 and 12 times. So it's just little things like that that I implemented into my wrestling that made me such a good striker and the psychology and things like that because I was able to implement that and make my matches mean more than guys going out there and punching somebody 30 times and kicking somebody 20 times and throwing 20 super kicks because I have a fantastic super kick. So I only throw that once. I throw one punch. We hit one spine buster. So it's that one less is more thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about the details and that little intricate little things that you can put in to your work that makes it just as better as it was
Right.
before. So that is always important. So
It's the small things. The small things mean the biggest. They think a lot of people now think big things matter. Yes, but at the right moment, if you do the small details, a lot of people catch those more than not.
yeah, and also the psychology as well about why you're doing the moves because
Right.
that's just as important. Wanting to be able to have a reason for doing a move so that the crowd will react, and it'll mean just as much as it is just doing it on its own.
Yeah. Psychology is a big part of it. Telling a story is a big part of it. Some people nowadays don't think they need taught that, but good versus evil, bad versus good, all that stuff still matters today. And when it's done right, that's when the reactions come, and that's when people notice it the most.
Yeah, I mean, you worked in ECW, which was just had one of the most dedicated and devoted fan bases of all time. Talk to me about how you got started with ECW and Paul Heyman. Did he reach out to you, or someone from the higher ups at the promotion ask you wanting to join the company?
No, one of the guys that I was running with on the independents, his name's Curtis White. He wrestled around here as Toad. At the end of the WCW, he was tagging with PG-13. They called himself Frog. So if you go back and see that, that was him. So he was actually tagging with Lodi, and I actually trained Kurt as well. Uh, so we would run rampant on the independents here in the Carolinas, and he and I were working each other every weekend. Well, through Lodi, through Raven, through Tommy Dreamer, Kurt Toad got a tryout. And the Saturday, that was on a Sunday. The Saturday night before, he and I wrestled the Public Enemy in South Carolina. His tryout was in Georgia. Well, Toad got me to go down with him to the tryout at ECW. I didn't really want to go. I'm a such an you can't tell it from my stuff on TV, but I'm a introvert. I'm a very nervous around people, very shy. So I didn't want to do it. Um, he talked me into going. He said, "Look, Steve Carino because Carino was here in the Carolinas, and he and I knew each other. You know Simon Diamond, well, he was running his, what was he running? Lance Diamond at the time. Uh, Go hang out with them, see them. You get to politic, meet some people. Even if you can't get in the ring, just come down with me." So begrudgingly, I went with him during his tryout in Georgia. So when he did his little 5 minute deal, by the time he got done, Nova was running the tryouts. And he leaned outside the ring because I'd introduced myself earlier. He said, "Chris, do you have your gear?" I was like, "Yeah, it's in the car." He said, "Run and get it on and hop in the ring." So I did that, got in the ring with Simon. We did a little 5 minute deal. I got done with that. Nova told me I had a really good timing. Um, and as I got out of the ring, I heard somebody from in the crowd, well, not the crowd, but sitting in the bleachers yelled at Bill Alfonso, "Fonzie, get the ball guy back in the ring." And Fonzie looks at me. He says, "Paul wants you back in the ring, Daddy." And I looked out there, and Paul Heyman was sitting with Taz and the Dudleys, and they were watching the tryouts. So I got back in the ring, and they kept throwing guys at me for like the next hour. When that got done, I went to the back. I was cleaning myself up from where I was, sweaty, and I still have the image of that door opening and Paul Heyman walking in, full Paul Heyman mode, black hat, trench coat, just what you
The
see on TV.
ponytail.
Yes, he had the ponytail, so he walked in. He walked right up to me, um, stuck his hand out to me to shake it and said, "Hey, I'm Paul. It's nice to meet you." I said, "Hey, Paul, my name is Chris Wright. It's an honor to meet you, sir." He asked me, he said, "How long have you been wrestling? Where are you wrestling at? What's blah, blah, blah." I said, "Well, I'm, in the Carolinas, the Mid Atlantic, wrestle. I'm at the power plant now." He said, "Do they have you on contract there?" I said, "No, sir." Because just a few weeks before, Paul Orndorff and JJ Dillon kind of told me I didn't really have what it took to make it at WCW.
Hmm.
I said, "No, they really told me I didn't have the looks and what it took to make it at WCW, so I'm not on contract." He said, "Well, what's your wrestling name?" I said, "C.W. Anderson." And in classic Paul, he goes, "I knew it." He goes, "You have the Anderson look. You look like Arn. You have the left punch, the spine buster." He said, "Chris, don't leave before I speak to you at the end of the night." I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "You're more than welcome to hang out backstage." So as the doors are opening, the show's getting ready to start. Jim Molyneux comes up to me and says, "Are you CW?" "Yes, sir." He said, "Paul wants to see you in the back." So I go in the locker room. He's sitting back there with Vito LaGrassa, Skull Von Crush, Danny Dorn, and Roadkill. He introduces me to him. He says, "You're tagging with Vito. You guys are third match. Welcome to ECW." So that's literally how I got my job at ECW.